Alright, so let's talk about YCS Indianapolis. Share all of your thoughts of the event in the comments down below, and also like the video if you like me doing these event breakdowns. So a lot of things happened at YCS Indy. The number one most notable thing is probably Exodia on stream. Obviously 2 times Exodia got assembled, and we all kind of went wild, and I think it made this event more memorable, and it's just really cool. So Exodia being on stream was probably the highlight of the weekend, but let's talk about the actual event and everything else that took place. Obviously, it's a very, very diverse format, and for the beginning of this video, we have a breakdown here. I figured we would pull this up to sort of have a vibe of what the event looked like, because it's insane how many decks are able to do well. There is the majority of Rescue Sinful Spoils, but this also makes me think that maybe people were also prepared for this matchup, just because a lot of players also expected to play against this deck, and then it kind of proved itself to be that way, because we saw like Rescue Ace, fun fact, during Swiss was featured 3 times on stream, and it lost every single of those rounds. Now, of course, the matchup comes into play and things that you maybe didn't have any kind of impact on, but still is like interesting to think about. Seeing as how, on the other hand, Rescue Ace is such a favorite to be one of the top decks in this new meta. And also this event was obviously great for all of the new cards that just came out in Age of Overlords, so we saw those being used. And like the MVP of the event probably was SP Little Knight. She just came in clutch every single time. Every single part of her effect is amazing. It's able to like do so many things, not just being disruptive against the opponent, but actually protecting your cards that you want to maybe get off the field and keep safe, or just being able to dodge stuff like targeting negation. And she just puts in so much work, and it's kind of insane to see another Busted Link 2 come into the game. We'll see what kind of impact she has moving forward, but I assume it's going to be a whole ton of it. So moving on to some of the other cards that saw a lot of play, and I figured we would talk about this. It's always interesting to sort of discuss some tech cards and stuff. For the first one, Droll was pretty much everywhere. It's like the saddest feeling when you see 2 Dragon Link players drolling each other. It's actually also kind of funny. And not to mention that this actual match like ended up being very long and grindy, so Joel did not do that much. And it was actually a really cool match. But yeah, Joel was like everywhere because it's so strong in today's meta. Also, the Horus cards are being incorporated in different strategies. And with Imseti searching, there's another one of those situations where Joel can just hurt the strategy even more. Horus tier limit as well as regular tier was seen at the event. But the Horus stuff plays into Joel harder, and it is a little bit different, so we'll see which version ends up being the dominant one moving forward. But it was really interesting to see that deck being played on stream. Like we mentioned, Sinful Spoils Rescue Ace was like so popular, and people really prepared with the new Sinful Spoils cards, which is also cool that they are seeing play and being incorporated all over the place. Because we also saw Mikanko Sinful Spoils, and that match was just kind of sad because of the one-off evenly match that really sealed off game 2, not to mention the Acid Golem lock. But going back to some cards that saw a lot of play, we also saw Impermanence and Ash being some of the dominant hand traps. There was Nibiru as well. We saw Forbidden Droplet putting in quite a lot of work, because different decks on stream were able to actually get some kind of value off of the Droplet discards. Obviously, tier is always going to be great, like Kelbeck Agira together with Droplet. And we saw Swordsoul utilizing Droplet as well. Swordsoul actually won on stream against Unchained. It shows off the power that Swordsoul has in a mid-rangey format, where it's just able to, you know, play all of this non-engine to really combat the meta and still put up like Swordsoul stuff on the board, which I guess seemed to be enough in that matchup. Overall, Swordsoul wasn't really the favorite, but like seems quite well positioned in the meta, so we'll see what happens with that. Other notable cards from the event are Talents and Prosperity. They are in literally almost every single deck with Prosperity. Every single deck that can play it probably plays it. It's insane. It's like literally making your opponent hand loop themselves when they're throwing hand traps at you, and then you go like we saw in one match, I think Unchained went for Prosperity, and then the player still got the combo piece that he needed, so the hand trap didn't really matter. It's amazing what Prosperity is doing for decks, so we'll see if it actually maybe gets hit on the ban list one day later down the line. And Talents is just a staple. And moving on to something else, I figured we would also talk about the little video packages, if you saw them on stream, when Konami did like, you know, how to to duel or what happens in the battle phase type of stuff. I figured we would mention this because I want to genuinely give them props for like doing something to like help invite players into the game and make it a little more easy to grasp if someone that doesn't really have a lot of knowledge actually watches the stream. I figured it's a cool way of doing something, at least to make the game a little more accessible for people, because it's insanely hard to come into the game in 2023. It's really, really difficult to learn. So, you know, good for them for doing that. I think that's kind of cool. But going back to some of the decks that we saw on stream and just overall at the event, Unchained is still proving itself to be really good. It just performs well, no matter that it has some matchups that aren't really favorable for Unchained. And moving on to other decks, Pearly seemed like a really good choice, and we already talked about this a ton with non-engine sort of changing in people's side decks. There isn't as many non-engine cards that actually hit Pearly as well, just like it used to be in the last meta with book cards. So moving on, we have Son of Alan Rika and some of these like combo decks like Infernoble, Scareclaw Manadium, also Horror's Tear. They can, you know, do well with people not playing as many hand traps. So we saw those, and there's also Flunder still being able to be a nice anti-meta answer to some of these, you know, top decks. Exosister as well, and then other mid-rangey stuff like Sword Soul. So now let's talk about the eventual winner first. Rescue Ace Sinful Spoils ended up winning the entire event, and is honestly just a showcase of how much this support actually did for Rescue Ace. We all kind of assumed it was going to happen, and judging by the OCG, we could have seen it coming, but sometimes it's not the same there because they have Max C and like other factors. But this time it actually proved itself to be the best deck, at least at this event. Now it may have to do also with some people still being a little unfamiliar with this engine in Rescue Ace, as well as just a lot of people actually playing the deck. It did have the highest representation like throughout the top cut, and we'll check that out as well, which means that it's probably going to have a higher conversion rate as well. But the deck is much, much more consistent, so it makes a ton of sense that it did well. Not to mention that it's just so solid at what it does and just being this really, really good mid-range contenders. But let's check out some other breakdowns as well. So after top 32, we have top 16, which again has 44% representation of Rescue Ace, and then also Tier Elements, Manadium, Pearly, Unchained, Rika Sanavelon, Horus Bistio, and Exosister. So Horus Bistio ended up only in just top 16, did make it further, but that's still an amazing accomplishment for such a cool deck, just this new innovation of the Bistio deck. And also combo decks like we discussed, Rika, Manadium, Tier, just doing well right now, as well as Pearly being a nice contender and Unchained as well. Like pretty much all of the sort of predictions we had for this event, I think, kind of came true just by this chart over here. And then we also have top 8 as well as top 4. And again, Rescue Ace has the highest representation, but still there are so many other decks that are viable as well. And Manadium as well as Pearly actually made it to top 4. So like we talked about with Manadium, some people just piloted it really, really well. And it does have kind of a hard time going second, but if you mitigate that with some of the cards in your build, I think you should be fine, as well as, you know, you play matchups where people don't have as many hand traps, and that's in your favor. Some people might be unfamiliar with Manadium. It is kind of a new deck with all the new support and stuff. People may get sort of confused and flustered in a matchup like that. And with Pearly, like we said before, pretty much some of the side deck cards don't hurt the deck anymore, and it's been solid all around. Exosister are a nice anti-meta deck, just like Flunder is, as well as Unchained just being solid, like we talked about, and Tier Limit as well. So I think the event, all in all, was a great representation of the meta, and I do think that things are sort of going to follow that pattern. And we'll see how much, you know, representation Rescue Ace still has when people sort of learn what it does and attempt to counter it even further. So yeah, I'm really excited to see. I do think the format is a little weird, maybe a little unhealthy in terms of how hard it is to prepare for it, but you let me know what you think. I really want to know if you actually enjoy this format and what you think of the top decks. Hopefully you enjoyed this video as well. If you did, make sure to give it a like, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.